we're going to get through this coronavirus thing, and I think the world will be different in that with the amount of negative yielding bonds, negative yielding or zero yielding currencies in the world, gold will have a brand new following of millions and millions of people that think they want to own a bit of gold.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And in the midst of what I think in history will be known as one of the most fascinating financial landscapes, not just of our lifetimes, but things we've ever seen. Fortunately, I have my friend Douglas MacQuarrie of Asante Gold joining me on the show today to make some sense out of what's going on in the markets. He's also going to talk a bit about his company, where if you do still see gold and silver going up, and looking on how to invest in that. Certainly some of the quality mining stocks can be a good way to go. So with that said, Douglas, a pleasure to have you on here, my friend, today. It was great meeting you up in the PDAC show in Toronto. Obviously, the world's changed quite a bit since then, but to the most important things first, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Chris, thanks a lot. We really appreciate getting to talk to you again and to your audience there. I think things are pretty good. Like you say, I think the world's changed a lot in the last 30 days. I'm an optimist. I guess if you're a gold investor like me, you have to be an optimist. The last 7 years have been pretty tough for most of my shareholders. But, we're going to get through this coronavirus thing. And I think the world will be different in that with the amount of negative yielding bonds, negative yielding or zero yielding currencies in the world, gold will have a brand new following of millions and millions of people that think they want to own a bit of gold. And of course, we all know there isn't that much physical gold in the world. So I think we're going to see a spectacular gold market for the next 2 to 3 years. So it's a good space to be in. Yep.
And certainly, which makes you a good friend to have, because, geez, I'm sitting around here looking at these metals prices get crushed at the same time, like you pointed out, the Federal Reserve giving every reason to want to own gold and silver and precious metals. So one thing you mentioned that I think would be interesting for folks to hear about, that you've been doing this for a while. Obviously, anyone who bought gold in the last 10 years or so, maybe not the easiest time. Although if we do go back to the year 2000, gold was $250, $300. Certainly we've seen, even if not in the last week or month, but we've seen over these past 20 years, gold playing its role and priced in dollars going higher, which as more dollars are created. So anything you could touch on over the just thoughts on the last 20 years of how this is developed and where it might be going from there?
Right. Well, I've been tracking gold's price since when I was in university in the early 70s. I used to get the Financial Times of London, and they had something called cross-currency charts, and I would diligently enter those into a Lotus 123 spreadsheet, which was the precursor to Excel.
Yep.
and chart gold. So I personally believe gold is money. It's the basis of all our money, whether the central bankers admit to it or anybody else admits to it or not. They haven't thrown out the gold in Fort Knox. They haven't thrown out the gold in the central banks of most of the world.
If we only could have gotten you to explain this to Ben Bernanke when he said he didn't understand gold and didn't know anybody else who did.
Hey, well, don't be too hard on Ben. Our Canadian government I think it was in the late 70s or early 80s, they sold every ounce of gold that was in the Bank of Canada. So even today, we don't have any gold holdings at all. We're trading at a multiple of the earnings power, the GDP of Canada. Yeah. Well, okay. I guess we're a small population. We've got lots of resources, so it gives some value to our dollar. But I, as a Canadian, weren't too impressed with that move. But, just to carry on that thought. So basically, if gold is money and it doesn't pay a yield, and the US dollar is the world currency and it does pay a yield, then clearly for the last 50 years, 70 years, the US dollar wasn't a bad investment. It paid a yield. It was very liquid. You could go anywhere in the world with it. But I think what's happened today, Chris, is we're in just a new 40 or 50 year cycle where basically investors are saying, fiat currency doesn't pay a yield. As a matter of fact, it's depreciating rapidly. And look at gold. Gold's maintained its wealth. And geez, it's up, what, $200, $300 in the last year? Let's buy some gold. So I think for the next 2-3 years, smart investors in the world are going to say gold is the real money. The US dollar, the euro, the British pound, the Brexit pound, the Chinese yuan have all got huge downside risk. So let's park a certain percentage of our money in gold. And then 2 or 3 years from now, when the smart bankers and the IMF and the World Bank figure it out and come out with a new currency that pays a 6 or 8 or 10% yield so that the world can start trading with each other and functioning again, fine. But that's 2 or 3 years from now. So in the meantime, what is the upside on gold? I can't even haphazard where, the upside, but I think $4,000 is a pretty good target for the next, the next year. Why not?
I think that makes a lot of sense because obviously it's a big number, but so are the numbers the Fed is pumping into the markets on almost a daily basis now, where, it was incredible to see gold down so much over the past couple of weeks, where it's almost as if the Fed puts $1 trillion in today, and then the follow-up plan is, well, if that doesn't work, we'll try $2 trillion tomorrow. Although, Douglas, if I may be bold enough to disagree with you on anything here, you did say the smart bankers. I don't know if that's an oxymoron or even something that's possible. But maybe there will be gold bankers one of these days, and which makes it interesting. Again, it sounds like you have a great sound money background, have been seeing what's been unfolding for a long time. So I'm curious, how did you go from that to getting involved with a gold mining company?
Right. Well, okay. So great. I love exploration. So I've been involved in West Africa for, coming on 1993. So what's that? 27 years. And in that time, we've seen some big mines found, some big discoveries. And I don't think there's anything more exciting than taking a $1 or $2 or $3 million market cap company and finding $1 billion worth of gold. That's super exciting. Yes. And, my last company, PMI, started out the same thing. It was 5 cents for years and years. And we picked up a property here, a property there, and blah, blah, blah. Went through the 2007 world financial crisis, all of that stuff. All right, that company now has more than 1,000 employees, and it's producing 220,000 ounces a year with a 6 million ounce deposit, which basically my team put together and put into the company. So when I left there in 2011, I said, well, let's do it again. I love the exploration end. The development end, that's a bit of a different story. On that end, you maybe get a chance to make double your money once the mine's been built and all that. Mm-hmm. You got the upside on the gold price for sure, but these juniors, they can go from 5 cents to $5. That's a more exciting play for me. So we put Asante together in 2012, and we acquired the Kubi asset in 2014, 2015, and a few other exploration projects. So unfortunately, we just haven't had money to do much. A few $100,000 a year doesn't drill a lot of holes. So we basically just been maintaining our projects, doing some small exploration work. But I think that's about to change. Kubi is ready to go in production at $1,600, $1,700 gold. It looks extremely attractive to produce 40 or 50,000 ounces a year at an all-in cost of maybe $1,000 an ounce, picking a number. So if that's $700 or $800 an ounce margin for a little company with, essentially zero debt. I mean, we got $3 million on our books, but that's relative to the value of the asset, that's insignificant. We're planning on financing the construction of the mine using a joint venture, so we're not going to be diluting the company. So we're in the market to find a partner to put up those funds and pay back. So once again, it's joint venture funding. So once the mine is built and we've got a clear income stream, we have no debt on our books. Well, basically, Asante is for our shareholders. We get share appreciation between now and a revaluation to production. And then what the heck? Let's pay a dividend. Let's do a gold dividend. Shareholders can take their dividend in cash or gold. Why not? I'm the largest shareholder. I'd be happy to sit back and take a quarterly dividend. So I think as gold moves up to above $2,000, the profitability of Kubi is going to be spectacular. It's in a great country. Millions and millions of people in Ghana are involved in gold mining. The GDP of the country is very much tied to gold and gold mining. It's like the Nevada of Africa. There's nobody in Ghana going to come out. No politician going to come out against gold mining in Ghana. So I think it's a great place to be, and just tons and tons of upside on this project at this time. Yep.
Well, I appreciate that, Douglas, and actually want to come back to the gold dividend and Ghana. Although, even taking a step further back, you mentioned that you've done this before, which certainly in the mining industry, all the folks that I've talked to and have learned from, uniformly seem to agree that the management team in place, one of the key steps to any of these projects. Having already succeeded before, curious your thoughts on that and what you see as the biggest variables that lead to success versus failure in this type of venture.
Okay, well, I think you need a lot of luck. You need some brains, and you really need to be persistent. So like I say, I've been in West Africa for a long time, and there's lots of big gold mines yet to find. The big guys are there, the Newmonts and the Goldfields, and they're all there. They're getting tougher and tougher to find. So rather than look for a huge deposit of very low grade ore, we're focusing on high grade underground targets. What we like about that, Chris, is environmentally. Come on, be honest. Whoops. Hello? Still there?
Yep, still here.
Sorry, my phone's got some other caller trying to. Anyway, just ignore that. So,
you have people calling you looking for the gold left and right. It's always a good sign.
There you go. So, we saw in the last cycle $20 billion written off on these large, low-grade deposits that the big guys had bulked up on projects with $4 billion, $5 billion capital costs. And these all got written off when the price of gold came back. So to heck with that. Let's concentrate on 5, 10, 20 gram underground deposits. Maybe there's not so many ounces, but there's a huge margin. And so it's more the Agnico Eagle model that we're interested in. A very small environmental footprint, very green. We can run it with solar power. We don't need to use diesel. The Ghanaian deposits are typically coarse, free gold. Certainly our Kubi is that. Our Keyhole project is that. So we could basically use gravity to get most of the gold out. We don't need to build mills. There's plenty of mills in Ghana that we can, and there's trucks available. There's great infrastructure. We can ship our ore to toll mills. So that cuts $35 million off our CapEx. Mm-hmm. It cuts off permitting time. It cuts off having noxious chemicals on our site. So I think we're focusing on high-grade, underground, environmentally sustainable projects. That I think sets us apart from most of the other players. Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And again, the type of thing that having experience, especially interesting, sometimes having successful experience or learning from a lesson where things didn't go well, but either case, it's nice you have that on your side. Douglas, you talked a little bit earlier about a gold dividend. We talked about that at the PDAC show, which I found interesting because there's folks like me who see the money printing and are looking for a higher metals price. Yet once you get past that point, I know it's not as popular in America to even think about dividends or anything other than Tesla stock, but it's interesting what you mentioned where you could be a shareholder, a part owner in a business that actually is returning a metals dividend, something I've wondered if some of these companies would do before, and maybe you could just touch on that a little bit more.
Well, yeah, Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head. Most public junior mining companies, they go into the business with one focus: to find something and sell it to a major. That's it. Growth, 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 and get out. And of course, majors, well, I don't know about, you correct me if I'm wrong, but do they pay a 1% dividend? I mean, what is the upside on the major, the Barricks of the world and the Newmonts? I mean, is 100% on their stock, perhaps?
No.
And so if you got 100%, okay, you double your money. That's nice. And a 1% dividend? I mean, give me a break. I mean, I think companies have to start thinking about, if you're making 100% margin on your costs, and you've paid back your capital, and you got enough to get you through, enough working capital to get you through issues. There's always issues in mining. Then why shouldn't you take half of your net and dividend it out to your shareholders? Damn, the companies are for the shareholders. I mean, Newmont and Barrick, they'll look after themselves. The neat thing about Asante is we have some very key large shareholders that, put five people in a room, you got 60% of the stock. So I'm not particularly worried about any takeovers. So what we've got to do is get in production and enjoy the move on gold from 1450 up to wherever, where there's a huge potential to generate cash and or gold dividends, and let the investors choose how they want to take it. Pay your shareholders. That's definitely our focus.
Well, I like that. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who like that, and just like the approach you have, which is so different from my remembrance of Wall Street CEO mentality. So it's nice to hear. And then perhaps the last one before we wrap up, you mentioned the jurisdictional risk of Ghana, which you described as quite friendly. I'm sure for most Americans and Canadians, maybe Canadians are a little more savvy with these things, but I would imagine a lot of Americans hear Ghana and think geopolitical risk. But again, if you could just touch on that a little bit and what really is accurate in terms of that.
Well, sure. Back in '93, when I first went to Ghana, they had a corporal who had a coup X years before, and so it was basically a military government, which transformed peacefully into a democracy. And they've had, I don't know, every 4 years, same as the States. They've had eight elections since. Everyone very, very, very peaceful. So from that perspective, Ghanaians are very peaceful people. They do not like conflict. And just like the States, there's two different types of parties. But the bottom line is, when it comes to gold mining, they don't change their policies much at all. It works. They definitely need to tweak their laws for junior companies. There's very, very few. There's maybe 5 junior companies in the whole country, and the rest are majors. And so, they haven't figured out yet that, you got to nurture these little companies because they become big companies. Those are the mines of the future. So anyway, that's, I think, slowly getting through. But we don't foresee any major changes in taxes or royalties at all. It's just too important an industry. They say Ghana is Africa for beginners, so I'd welcome any of your listeners to, when this virus scare is finished and things get back to normal, to take a trip to Ghana. It's a very, very peaceful, friendly country, and they'd be quite impressed. Yep.
Sounds like the opposite of Congress, which is always good to hear. And again, I appreciate you sharing that, because there's so much stigma and stereotype of what the rest of the world looks like in places most of us have never been to. So it sounds like you have a lot of good things in place there, Douglas. And perhaps just in wrapping up, you can let folks know the best way to find you, to find out more information about the projects, and how they can keep track going forward.
Right. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, no, great talking to you, and hope we can do this again. So our website, www.asantegold.com, is a great place. I've got a marquee that scrolls across. I'm continuously updating and putting some links to various things on there, the world gold market, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, just keep in touch. We do have 3 exploration projects. Again, when we get a few more working capital dollars, we're going to have to do a small financing one of these days. But when we get some working capital, we're going to get very, very aggressive on the exploration. And why not find another 1 or 2 million ounce deposit? They're there. I think they could be on the projects we already have. Just got to spend some money. So, yeah, exciting times.
Well, Douglas, that makes a lot of sense, and sounds like some interesting pieces you have going on there, and we'll certainly be looking forward to following your success and checking in again soon and seeing how everything's coming along.
Okay, Chris, thanks a lot. Have a great one. Keep safe, eh?